Well, that was a question which I wanted to answer for myself as well. You know, who influenced Bill Buckley? And as you say, we sort of, did he just sort of, you know, emerge from the sea, you know, all complete? Or what were the influences on him? And as I read some of the earlier things that he wrote and some of his earlier comments, it seemed to me that in that period there, in the first 20 years or so, from when he was a teenager to, say, his mid-30s or maybe late 30s, there were 4 influences. And it's interesting because if you look at them and analyze them, you'll see that they represent the various strains of conservatism. First came Albert J. Nock, the arch-libertarian, a wonderful stylist as well as being very much of an anti-statist. And I think that attracted Bill also, that Mr. Nock was very much a contrarian, would take on the establishment and use them. Remember he said that the followers of the New Deal reminded him of dogs. Pretty tough language, meaning that they were sort of waiting for the next handout. They're waiting for the next plate of food to be handed to them. Tough language, but very, very provocative. He first began reading Nock at his father's suggestion while he was a teenager, particularly the Memoirs of a Superfluous Man. So this was the libertarian influence when he was just getting started in his political philosophy. And as a matter of fact, he later commented to Henry Regnery, his publisher of his first book, God and Man at Yale, you know, I've always wanted, this was years later, I always wanted to write a book about Nock. He always fascinated me. Secondly, when he went to Yale, after serving in the Army, one of his most important, and perhaps his most important professor, was Wilmore Kendall, an expert on the Constitution, an expert on John Locke, who made the argument that there were 2 majorities in America, the congressional majority and the presidential majority, and that he felt, Mr. Kendall, Professor Kendall, that it was the congressional majority which is the more important, because it represented the individual, the various components of America, the various communities and cities and counties which make up America, rather than the president who represented the people as a mass. So that I think Kendall's political science influenced and reinforced Bill Buckley's traditional conservatism, his respect for the Constitution particularly. The next influence, I think, Whittaker Chambers, and this sort of more or less happened chronologically. When he was founding National Review, he wanted desperately to have Whittaker Chambers join as a senior editor to be on the masthead because he'd been mesmerized by Witness, Whittaker Chambers' great memoir of his battle against communism, first as a member of the Communist Party and then becoming an opponent of the Communist Party. Of course, the man who called out Alger Hiss as a member of the same Soviet spy ring to which Whittaker Chambers belonged. Bill Buckley called Whittaker Chambers the most important American defector from communism. Tremendous respect for him as somebody who fought communism, a wonderful stylist also. That was important to Bill, always style. That was how well you wrote. That was a critical element for him. And I think also Chambers saw the battle between the U.S. and the Soviet Union as not just political or economic, but also transcendental, seeing it as rising above almost a battle between good and evil. And finally comes James Burnham, who became a senior editor of National Review from the very beginning, stayed there by Bill Buckley's side for more than 20 years, almost a quarter of a century, was really the senior editor, the first among equals, a former professor of philosophy at New York University, former Marxist, but also somebody who was interested in taking a realistic point of view in both, particularly foreign policy, but also in domestic policy. So he was a leavening influence on Bill Buckley's idealism, because Bill was very much an idealist, particularly at the beginning. But Burnham sort of helped to broaden, shall we say, Bill Buckley's approach to politics, and was there beside him. Bill Buckley acknowledged the importance of James Burnham as a teacher to him and to all of those who were interested in ideas in America. So those four men. One other point that might be made is that they were all brilliant, and they were all men of faith. Knox was a libertarian, but also had been an ordained minister. Wilmore Kendall, raised a Methodist, converted to Catholicism. Whittaker Chambers, an atheist as a communist, but then became a very devout Quaker. And then finally James Burnham, sort of coming back into the Catholic Church at the very end of his life.
It really was, though, just at the very end, and not during most of his active.
But I think the fact that he did become that Catholic at the very end was a source of great satisfaction to Bill Buckley. Yeah. So these were the men who influenced him, men of intelligence, men of perception, and men of faith, even James Burnham, and helped to form the Bill Buckley that we know.